Hey guys, welcome to the Socially Stetson podcast. I'm excited because I have another one of my friends from my networking group here today, LuAnn Martinson, and we're going to dive into this later, but I'm excited for her to share her business and what she is doing with you guys because I know that a lot of people out there don't know that people like LuAnn exist, and we need to know. But LuAnn, before we talk about your business, tell us a little bit about you, who you are.
I would love to do that. So I am mother, daughter, sister, wife, so many things. So I was born in Chapel Hill, so native North Carolinian. Lived in DC, had a first time career there for about 13 years. We moved here for my husband's job. I stayed home with the kids. I call myself a professional volunteer for many years. Loved it. And some of the things I did during that volunteering time led me to where I am now. But my kids are graduate from college. I'm a true empty nester. Um, yeah, and how about a little bit of personal stuff too? I like being outside. I love sports. I'm a big Tar Heel fan, and have a crazy dog we adopted, Beagle mix. Probably wouldn't do that again. And but you live and learn. So yeah, it's fun. It's a good time in life right now.
Love it. Love it. I know when I first moved to North Carolina, everybody said, "Are you a Duke fan or a Tar Heels fan?" And my sister and I were like, "We're Alabama fans." And people just don't get that. They're like, "Are you from Alabama?" No, but we're just big Go Tide. Anyway, I am so excited that you're on the podcast. And I know that this is a social media podcast, and we normally talk social media. And I talk to people who are in the marketing industry. But fun fact, you used to be in the marketing industry for school systems, right?
Correct.
So, and we're going to talk about your journey, how you went from A to B. But we met in our networking group, and I loved talking to you about your business because one, it doesn't cost me any money to work with you, and I love that. But also, I feel like I'm able to provide people really good service by being able to refer people to you. And I 100% know that I have listeners on this podcast and people in my membership that will be so thankful for hearing what you have to share. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to let you take it away and talk about your business and what it is that you do. And then I do have some questions for you.
Okay, great. So the name of my business is Owl Be There. That's OWL, like that wise bird for wise care guidance. I am technically what we call a senior living advisor. So what I do is I help families that, and also the individual themselves that may be looking for a great community for their senior loved one. So it might be independent living, it might be assisted living, it might be somebody who needs something due to an Alzheimer's related illness, so something along the memory line. So, what I do specifically, first of all, I'm a free service, which is just so important for these families. Um, and the reason I'm free is because I can work with all the different communities out there, and I do. But what it allows you to do is to utilize my wealth of knowledge. I go in and out of all of the different communities. So rather than you starting a search via Google, and the marketing person sitting here knows this, the things that pop up first are likely the companies that spend the most money on the SEO. They may be the ones
Absolutely.
that also, because they have the bigger budgets, they may be the more expensive communities.
Mhm.
You make that first call, you get this outrageous price, you shut down the whole search process. And also, and I don't want to knock SEO. We all need that, right? As part of our business. But there's a lot of other things being fed to you that are not, in fact, what you're looking for.
Right.
And so you're being sent the wrong place, and you're also frustrated. So when I work with you, I'm going to find out, first of all, what's going on with your loved one. You may not even need my services, but boy, can I save you some time and point you to the right thing. If you do need my services, I'm going to understand the major factors that are involved in the decision. Obviously, budget is huge, and where someone wants to be located geographically. Can they manage your loved one's needs? That's really important. Different places provide different levels of care. It's a nuanced thing that I know from going to all these places. We also want to have a feel. Um, when you're working with seniors, guess what? A lot of times the women outlive the men. So if I'm working with a male client, I'm like, I know where there's a lot of men that live there. It's not imperative, but it sure is nice if you're going to have a buddy or two to know that. So, like I said, understanding all the issues to then give them a guided search. So a lot of people will hear this and say, like a real estate agent to the seniors. Yes, somewhat, but also if you're in a crisis, I can guide you through the process quickly. Or if you're not sure at all, I can educate you on the process. So I like to think of myself as an educator at heart first. So ultimately, my goal is to educate you, get you to tour, and if your family is, and I use crisis to mean if someone is unsafe at home, move the process along so that we can get them in a safe environment. Those are my goals for you.
How do you work with those families who have a senior who's not ready to leave?
I think that's the majority of folks. I would say, Stetson, that we have planners in the world and people who are sort of dug in. So we have the people who've already planned, they've picked out a place, they've moved somewhere, they know what the next step is going to be. The folks who don't want to go anywhere, a lot of times I need to first work with the family. I mean, have we already got the family tension and so many things going on? One thing I always offer to do is to go meet with the loved one in person. So a lot of folks won't do that. The reason you need to go meet with them in person is establish the trust. We have preconceived notions of what senior living might look like, stereotypes that need to be broken down, but ultimately just that whole need to build trust. We have a lot of scammers out there,
Oh my goodness,
and
tell me,
seniors
I
are
know
off
all about that.
right, and seniors are often the victim of that. So, hey, why would she do this? Why would she be free? What's in it for her? If I can get them to understand and meet me, and we're not always successful, but when they can understand and actually go and see a place, if I can convince them to go see one place, sometimes we're successful in breaking down those barriers. The other thing I would say too is I function as a third party neutral. So I don't bring in all the baggage, right, that we all have. I've got it with, we all have it with our own families, right? I don't come through the door with that. I haven't said, you really need to do this or you really should do that. I come in and just ask what's going on. And while you may have listened, anyone in the family, they get to tell their story anew. And sometimes that's what they want.
Yeah. I love this too because I didn't even think about it from a scammer point of view. And in the industry that I'm in, I get to see so much of the scam. I mean, I think I've gotten 3 scam texts today. And I think we get so used to it, numb to it, that we don't report people or we just let it slide by. And we need to be better, I think, about reporting people and stuff like that. But it's another reason I was excited to have you on the podcast because I do want people to know that they can trust you and just hear your voice, hear your personality, because I do think you have such a calming spirit about you. And I know we've talked about our faith and we have our faith in common. And I love that. And I know some of your struggles and obstacles and what makes you care so much um, for the elderly. And also common factor because my former job, I used to work with the average age demographic of 85-year-olds. And I heard somebody say one time, we're scared to get old because we know how we treat older people. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's true. Because it wasn't until I started working with older people that I was like, why? Why are people treating them this way? And it would make me mad. And I know that you probably think the same thing, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the things, your personal crises and things that you went through that has helped made you a better servant for the seniors.
Sure. And it's absolutely part of my journey. When I explained to people this business undertaking I was starting, they were all like, "How did you come up with that idea?" Um, and I didn't really come up with that idea. But and then people will say, we have such an aging population, good demographics, all those things. And yes to all of that. But the truth is, for me, when I was, first telling you when I moved here, soon after that, my father was diagnosed with cancer. And he lived another 4 years. I was went through the whole process watching him. My mom really was his caregiver, but we were fortunate to have great insurance, and them living in Chapel Hill, they could utilize a lot of services right there. But the most fascinating thing to me was watching hospice when he got towards the end. And I was like, how do they know to do that? How could they tell me these things? And it was for me a very fascinating experience. I don't know, just to see it and explain it and experience it. Sad, yes, but also just amazing that they could say, no, these are the things that are going to happen. Um, and likewise, about the same time, my father-in-law had a very advanced form of Parkinson's.
Mm,
So he actually passed away a year before my father. Um, and so it's a very different thing to watch because his was so physically debilitating.
right.
Um, and we felt like, from a family perspective, they maybe didn't do some of the things they should have, like moving out of their house earlier. They were still living upstairs, and um, a lot of difficulties and decisions that should have been made earlier on. So I would say, we saw one side and saw a different side. I also too want to say that when you're fighting a disease, that's probably part of the tactic in the fight. Um, so I certainly respect that. But the stress it put on the family to know, and I still hear this today, Stetson, well, if we fall down, we just call the EMT. And trust me, they do that at the communities because there's a proper way to get someone up. You want to make sure there's no head injury. All these precautions are being taken. But when you're living at home and you're falling repeatedly, that's not necessarily a healthy approach, and that's not what they're there for. So, um, trying to learn to look forward. Um, say not having a plan is actually a plan, right? It's not a good plan, but that's unfortunately your plan.
Well, and that's why I think it's so important for people to know that you exist. I'm so glad that I know you exist because I don't want to think that I'm in my 40s, LuAnn, but I'm in my 40s and my parents are in their 70s. And it's not something people want to think about. It's not a happy thought. It's not something that people want to plan for. But I can tell you, just even knowing that I know you makes me feel better because at least I know who to come to. But I agree, it's that early preparation. Go ahead and build the relationships. Go ahead and look at places. Even if you're not a senior yet, I think it's a good idea to meet with you, right? And to go ahead and see some places. Go ahead and make a plan, make it easier on your kids or make it easier on yourself. And go ahead and start that preparation and planning. Think about what your life would look like 10 years from now because it might not be 10 years when you need it. Am I right?
Correct. I think the whole thing is, again, just like you said, think about what you want to be able to do. Um, and so it's beyond just thinking about places. Do you have the legal documents in place? Have you made decisions that are important? You know, we like to still whisper about death and not talk about that. But as Christians, we know that death is part of life. Um, and I don't want to be someone who talks about it, but you know, when my own father passed away, he had already planned out his entire funeral, who was going to speak from him, carried the hymnal home from church. That's probably not your normal person, but my goodness, was it easy for us to execute his wishes because he just had thought about it. Now, did he know it was coming? Yes, but any of us can think about um, what types of extent of medical care we want to go into later in life. And you don't have to think about that long and hard, but you that might come to you at some point. Thinking about it while you're of sound mind, or watching if you have a close friend that struggles with something, can give great perspective on your thoughts about aging, death, and just like I said, the things that we have been taught to whisper about.
Yeah, and that's why I don't want to whisper about it. I'm learning this year and all sorts of things, just being single and dating, like voicing and letting things come out that, are uncomfortable, whether that's about just dating, being lonely, being single, financials in a business world. And so that's part of why I like this podcast. And my listeners have said they've liked this podcast because it is very raw and authentic and open. And that's how I like to be. I like to talk about what I'm learning as well. And so we like to do that. I want to ask you, I think I haven't seen it yet, but I love Ted Danson. I think he is hysterical. And I've seen something promoted on Netflix. I think there's a new TV show
Yes,
out, Man on the Inside or something.
correct. You've
Is
got it
that's
right.
it?
So, and I did watch it because I
Okay.
did want to do something cute with our networking group. And I'll say a couple things. I watched an interview he gave, and he and the show's developer, like, we want to tell a positive story. And they do. I probably watched 3 or 4 episodes, and it was kind of weird because they nailed really what it's like to go in and tour a place. They also show very beautifully that how Ted Danson's wife on the show passes away, and his reflective thought about it and his continuous struggles. And it was so on point because a lot of the people that I work with, they're like, I know I'm lonely here, but I don't want to leave all my memories. Um, just struggling to make that next move forward. And like I said, I go into all these communities. Now, there's certainly people that require help at the assisted living communities. I have sat on the front porch and rocked in rocking chairs and talked to people. So when I say I have a feel for a community, I'm there early sometimes. I'm chatting with people. I find out what's going on. I've eaten the meals. Um, and they'll tell you, I like it here. I have friends. We're doing things. Um, and they still have their freedom to come and go. And most importantly, there's more eyes on them, but they're still living independently. And I
Right.
love that. So, sort of back to the show, what I loved is we're boldly telling a story about aging gracefully.
Right. I think that's actually becoming a more common message that I'm even hearing and seeing on social media. Cindy Crawford actually recently said, she hasn't had a lot of work done on her face and people are indifferent about it. Halle Berry got on there. She's not getting work done. And they're talking about just why are we so scared to get older? But it's because what we've been trained and taught and fed and consumed. And then also what we know happens is the death thing that nobody wants to talk about. So I think people try to, with looks and everything, just make themselves as young as possible.
Yeah, and I think about that, when I go into communities too, because I see some, I see the men too, but I mean, I see women just with incredible style still that I'm like, I want to have that. Maybe it's what they're dressed, maybe it's their hair. I mean, they still have a salon in all these places that they showed that in TED Dance, and that is absolutely true. And they'll say, my mom still loves to have her hair done. Of course she does.
Of course. Of
And
course.
do your nails and all those things.
It's that
She's still,
physical touch too, because I think a lot
oh,
of
yeah.
them don't get physical touch. And when I go see my grandmother, it is just, she wants to hold my hand. This is something I did a few years ago. I probably need to do it again. My grandmother, she's next week will either be 97 or 98.
Mm.
I may making her older. She's mid to upper 90s. My other grandmother passed away earlier this year at 100 years old.
Oh, yeah,
So
you got some longevity in your family.
the women live long in my family. Both I had two great grandfathers that lived to 99. So I got to meet both of my great grandfathers. So I'm blessed that longevity in the life, but at the same time I got to see one grandmother live in her house the entire time. And my other grandmother who's here locally in Charlotte, um in a well-placed living place right now. The first one that we put her in, we wish we never would have, but we did not know. And side note, I'll just talk about that for a minute because I do think it's important, and then I'll get back to what I was saying. But we thought she was dying when she went there. I mean, it was just awful. We thought just the change of moving her there completely just
Mm.
flipped a switch. Then I won't go into details what was happening, what we found out, but it just wasn't a well cared for place. And when we moved her to another one that was more pricey and more expensive, she was then like giving tours to people, like not on her deathbed anymore. And she's been there for years now. And then we felt guilty as a family of, dang, we should have done our research more. And I've heard lots of awful things about the first home that she was in, but that's where people like you come in, where people don't make that mistake. You know the stories, you know the experiences. But back to what I was saying about visiting her here in Charlotte, that physical touch thing and just the companion thing. I work from home, and there was one day I hate doing my taxes. I hate finances and doing those things. And I said, well, let me kill two birds with one stone. I went to go visit my grandmother. She just wanted the company of me, somebody that she knows that loves her and that she loves, sitting in a room with her. And I got to sit in the chair and just work on my taxes while she watched game shows on TV, but she just loved having me there. And so I think we forget sometimes that they don't need much. They just need a hug. They need you to hold their hand. And that's why I think the salons are so good, because they crave that physical touch.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I go in, I speak to people, and if it's a community where I place someone, I'll stop in and say hi or see them if I actually met them and it wasn't just the family. But I like we were talking about with the aging. I mean, I just see women that are still hip and cool, and I think, it's not just about the way their face look. It's about how they carry themselves, how they approach life. It's more than just what's going on there. So yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to watch that because, like I said, I probably am in tune with it more than most people. But yeah,
I'm going to just tie that back into today's life. It's not about how you look, it's about who you are and how you carry yourself and how you present yourself. I love that. Well, to wrap it up, I do want to just ask you a couple of social media questions. So, see, I'm not your social media manager, but if I were, I would totally be optimizing this show on Netflix to be promoting who you are. I think if I were you, I would be doing that every single day. So, LuAnn, what is your social media plan? Are you going to be using the show to
well,
talk
yes.
about
I
it?
mean, now that you've put it out there like that, so here's sort of my I have to. And actually, the show's probably a great suggestion, a great conduit, because I used to get caught in my struggle of, you know, it's probably people our age that I need to be connecting with because they're looking on behalf of their parents. The seniors themselves, like we said, most aren't looking, so I'm not going to reach them on social media. But yeah, I need to work on that because it does. it does put that beautiful twist on things rather than me working with young adults who are
Mhm.
fearing what's going on with their parents.
Right. I think just social media advice, and this is for anybody listening, for any business, if there is a TV show that directly relates to your industry and it's hot and it's new, you want to utilize that as much as possible because it stops the scroll. Even if it's just a picture, even if it's an article about Ted Danson, even if it's just, here's my thought. You could say, I watched 4 episodes of this show. Here are my thoughts. And you could just type it out.
That,
It doesn't have to be a video because that pop culture still stops the scroll. Side note, in my monthly membership, I have a whole training on how to stop the scroll using pop culture. And so I love teaching this because we do want to optimize the opportunities that we have to get people to stop and read what we're talking about. And so if pop culture and Netflix is using a show to get people thinking more, this is the perfect opportunity for you to dive right in. So I
I
think you could
know.
get a lot more clients that way,
You're
LuAnn.
right. And the timing is right there because this is sort of that time of year where people really maybe see and have a little bit more extended family interaction and take
Right, the
note of things.
holidays.
Yes. And just kind of see some things. So yes, I need to hop on that and use your brain that thinks automatically that way.
Well, not automatic, years and years. For sure. It does now though. So just a quick, some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
What's your favorite social media platform? Do you have one?
Oh, Instagram.
Me too.
Yeah.
Instagram girlies.
Yeah.
Um, what is the last thing that you binged watched that you loved?
Hmm. Now, I want to tell you that I did put myself on a I'm not binging things anymore, at least with
Okay.
my husband. So let me think, what did I binge? What was the series that was it on Netflix too that has Kristen Bell and
Oh, and Adam
yeah,
Brody. Nobody
nobody
wants
wants
this.
something like
Something
that.
like that.
Yes. I knew my husband wasn't going to watch it. And then I told my daughter, she's like, it was good. Yeah. So I did
It was
binge that.
so good.
Yeah.
I finished it in 2 days. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
I again, clever setup, liked it. So
I liked it because it was just so realistic.
yeah.
I hope it's realistic. I also had a picture of Adam Brody hanging up in my college dorm room, so that's why I watched it. I'm like, I'm in love with a rabbi. I'll
Yes.
take it. Um, let's see. Do you have any books that you would recommend that you just really love?
Well, one I would definitely recommend on aging, and I hope I get the name right. I don't have it right here. It's by Atul Gawande. It's called Being Mortal.
Mm,
And he's a physician that goes through, then has to becomes part of the medical system and sort of a caretaker for someone from the opposite side and reverses some of his thinking about the extreme measures. So it like some of those things we first talked about, um, it gives you a framework to think about some of those things.
wow,
Um,
I like that.
and so I love Kristen Hanna. I'm holding her latest book for like Christmas time reading. Um, so anything historical fiction I like. And then to be honest, uh, I like a good, trashy, quick whodunit.
Yes,
I am, I that's just kind of what I like. So my husband gives me a lot of those, quick reads. That's my jam. So
I love it. That's fantastic. Well, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask you before we wrap up?
uh, no, I thought this was great, and just appreciate you urging us to have these conversations.
Yeah.
Just a great platform to have it.
Is this your first podcast interview?
It is. It is. And wait, quick
I
note when
don't
I
think it
have
should
to,
be your last.
well, when I first, part of my journey was in some of this, like during COVID, I used to listen to all these podcasts about aging and, different things because I was trying to figure out what my next path forward was. So, yeah, I didn't get too much into that. It was a heavy duty, those, but it was, part of the journey. So I haven't been on one. It was very fun, Stetson. I
I'm
thoroughly
glad I
enjoyed it.
could be your first podcast, and I definitely hope I'm not your last because you did well, and I do think it is um, a great way for you to market your business. So maybe we should talk about that when we see each
Yes,
other, how to get
I
you on
know.
some more podcast episodes. Thank you so much for sharing. I will link all of your information in the show notes below, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, podcast, Spotify. We will get you LuAnn's information, and feel free to message me on Instagram at Stetson K. Patton if you want to get connected, and I can send you to her as well. Thanks, LuAnn. I hope you have a great night.
Thank you. It was great.